I looked down at my hands in shock. They were completely black. I could no longer feel my fingers, and soon these hands would be gone too. At that moment, I felt broken, incomplete. My name is Tilly Lockey, and this is my story. I drifted in and out of consciousness. My mottled skin was blue and grey, and my eyes were pale, streaked by jagged bloodshot lines. As the ambulance sped away, my vitals triggered one alarm after another, but all my mum could do was wait. Wait to see if I'd even survived the night. I was just 15 months old. One night in January 2007, my mum was woken by the sound of whimpers from the nursery. I was running a temperature, but I was also at the age of teething. So my mum just gave me some paracetamol syrup and returned me to bed. But a couple of hours later, I whimpered again. When she picked me up this time, I got sick. She brought me to bed with her and my dad so they could keep a closer eye on me. And in the morning, my mum noticed my breathing was quite rapid and rang the doctors straight away. In the waiting room, I sat on my mum's knee, unable to lift my head off her chest. The doctor checked me over, looked in my ear and said, "Ah, there's the problem. It's an ear infection. Just pop to the pharmacy, pick up some kids' ibuprofen and she'll be right as rain in 48 hours. My mum was so relieved. We picked up the medicine, but I wouldn't be better in 48 hours. I'd barely be alive. My nana was in the middle of changing my nappy when, underneath my clothes, she saw massive bruises. It gave her such a fright. She had held me so tenderly and gently, but now I looked beaten to a pulp. She called for my mum, and when she saw the bruises herself, her head spun. This was clearly no ear infection, but what was it? Normally, she would do anything to protect her baby from injury, but how could she defend against something attacking from inside of me? She ran to the phone and rang for an ambulance. We were met at the emergency room by 10 medics, and after they treated me, they sat my mum down and broke the news. I had a severe case of meningococcal septicemia strain B, a bacterial infection of the brain and spinal cord, an infection of the blood. Then she said the words that no mother should ever hear, that I was going to die. My mum looked at me and got lightheaded, as if she were in a dream. She started to be sick and apologised for it. The doctor told her it was a normal reaction. Then my dad arrived. As if it wasn't bad enough for my mum to hear the news, now she had to break it to my father. Tilly's going to die. But my dad just looked right back at her and said, "No, she won't. It's Tilly. She eats all of her vegetables and is such a positive, happy little girl. She won't die. She can't." I was swollen, pale, and the bruises were taking over my entire body. The doctors told my parents that in order to give me the best chance of survival, my body needed to rest. They would shut me down and keep me alive by machines only. My parents kissed me and whispered to me to keep fighting, and to keep listening to their voices. Then the doctors made a critical decision. They would transfer me to Newcastle General, where I could be seen by experts in dealing with meningitis cases. They loaded me into an ambulance where I'd need a blood transfusion along the way. My parents weren't allowed to ride with me, despite being told I could die before I even reached the hospital. My mum looked right into the eyes of the nurse and asked him to look after me. He promised to do all he could. My parents rushed home to pack my stuff, because there was no telling how long I'd be hospitalised. As much as she resisted, my mum found herself consumed with horrible thoughts of having organised my funeral and sending future birthday and Christmas cards without my name on them. She tried to pull herself together. No more negative thoughts. It doesn't get you anywhere. From now on, only positivity. She grabbed my little cream teddy bear she bought when I was born, and they drove to the hospital, not knowing if I had even made it alive. "I have good news, Mr. and Mrs. Lockey. Your daughter survived the journey. Would you like to see her?" My parents were beside themselves with joy. She made it. She must have heard us when we told her to never let go. But their pleasure turned to shock when they got to my bed and saw how tiny and helpless I looked, surrounded by machines and with tubes coming out of my body. The closer they got, the worse it looked. The disease had taken over. I was swollen with red wine-coloured septicemia patches all over me. I didn't look human. They kept asking the question, is she going to live? They got the same answer every time. We don't know. For 4 days, my parents just sat next to my bed and prayed. The next morning, the medical specialist came in, looked at my mum and smiled. He told everyone I was getting better, that my body had responded well to the antibiotics, and that I must have incredible strength, because somehow I was fighting it. Everyone cried tears of happiness. My mum collapsed to the floor, relieved, exhausted, and grateful. However, he said, the disease has really damaged her body. We won't know to what extent until everything settles. There may need to be amputations. Normally, this news would be devastating, but at that point, he could have said anything to my parents. They were getting their baby back. Anything else, they could deal with. With my condition stable, my mum and dad were finally able to go home and rest. Then the phone rang with good news. She's just opened her eyes, the nurse said. Do you want to come say hello? My mum and dad ran as fast as they could. There I was, still tied up to machinery, and looking like I'd been beaten up badly, but with my little eyes open wide, looking around and wondering where I was. Would you like to hold her? A nurse said to my mum. Oh my goodness, yes, my mum answered. And together we sat on a nursing chair, cuddling. This is all I need in life. I don't need anything else, my mum said. Just my family and my healthy babies. When I had regained some strength, I was transferred from the intensive care unit to the recovery ward. This was quite stressful for my parents, as I went from being looked after 24/7 by nurses to my parents having to step in and take care of me while I recovered. It was hard for them to see me like this, and despite them doing everything right, I still managed to develop a secondary infection, causing me to need my 10th blood transfusion. They were confused and terrified. If I was getting better, why was this happening? It had been weeks since the trauma of contracting meningococcal septicemia, yet I hadn't said a word or smiled or shown any emotion at all. I just laid there in my hospital bed, staring at my hard black hands, studying them, maybe realizing for the first time just how useless they'd be. We were finally allowed to go home, but were told to come back in a couple of weeks for my amputations. My mum was reading the sweetest story to me and my sister in the living room when she noticed a little black thing on the cream sofa. Thinking it was a piece of fluff, she picked it up and was immediately mortified. It was my toe. The doctors had warned her that when the body heals itself, it sometimes pushes the dead part off the end. But there's simply no preparing for such a horrendous sight. My mum tried not to draw attention to it. She held it in her hand until she had finished the story, then put it in a plastic bag and brought it to the hospital. In the exam room, another toe came off as they were pulling my tights down. My mum asked, what do I do with her toes? Just put them in the bin. The bin? This was part of her baby. A few days later, I was back in the hospital for my amputations. My parents discussed with the surgeon to amputate straight across the wrists, rather than leave me with part of a hand or finger. How horrible to have to make those decisions. The doctors gave us a minute alone, and my mum just looked at me, heartbroken. I was so little, yet had already lived through so much. She held me close and made a promise. She promised me I'd be okay, that one day she would give me my hands back. The surgeons came back in. It was time. They wheeled me away to surgery, leaving my mum and dad alone again, helpless. Hours passed. What was taking so long? Was this normal? My mum wondered how I'd manage with no hands. How would I live independently? How would I make myself a cup of tea and hold a heavy kettle of boiling water? My mum and dad's eyes met. each of them wondering the biggest question that no one dare say out loud. Would it even matter? Would I even survive the surgery? They took each other's hands and squeezed, holding on to each other, holding on to hope.
Hi, thank you so much for watching part 1 of my story. My life was really difficult after my surgery, and I couldn't do things your average toddler could do, like crawl to get to the sofa and even open a door. But eventually, I found my own way of doing things. After everything I'd already been through, my parents couldn't bear to see me still having to struggle just to do your normal everyday task. One day my mum sat me down and she made me a promise. She said that no matter what, she would give me my hands back once again. Thank you so much for watching part 1 of my story, and make sure to tune in to part 2 to see what happens next and how I became the person I am here today. Thank you so much for all of your support.